Stories of Sherlock Holmes. Written by Arthur Conan Doyle. Adapted by Trevor Millam. And illustrated by Shirley Bellwood. About the author. Arthur Conan Doyle, 1859 to 1930. Arthur Conan Doyle was trained as a doctor, but wanted to be a writer. He wrote his first Sherlock Holmes story in 1887, and it was a huge success. His readers demanded more stories. By 1893, the writer had decided that he didn't want to be known only as the Holmes man. So he wrote a story in which Holmes died. When it was published, some people in London wore black clothes, as if a relative of theirs had died. And they never stopped asking for more Holmes stories. So Conan Doyle had to bring his detective back to life. The Boscombe Valley Mystery. Chapter 1. An Ordinary Crime? My name is Dr. Watson, and I have the good fortune to be the friend and companion of Sherlock Holmes. I try to keep a record of the cases he has solved. I have been with him many times when he has solved cases with just a few clues and his powerful brain. One such case was the Boscombe Valley mystery. I knew nothing about it until I got a telegram early one morning at home. It was from Holmes, asking me to go with him to the west of England. My wants are few and simple, so I very swiftly packed a case, said farewell to my wife, and was at Paddington in less than an hour. Holmes was pacing up and down the platform. He was instantly recognisable, tall and gaunt, and dressed in his long grey cloak and deerstalker hat. "It is really very good of you to come, Watson. I need someone I can rely on." We had the carriage to ourselves, and Holmes spent the time reading through a huge pile of newspapers. Now and then he stopped to make notes and to think. Finally, he rolled the papers into a ball and threw them onto the luggage rack. "Have you heard anything of the case?" he asked. "Not a word. I've not seen a paper for days." Said Holmes. "It's one of those simple cases which are so extremely difficult." "What do you mean?" "The more ordinary a crime seems to be, the more difficult it is to see the solution. It is the unusual which makes things easy." "What kind of crime are we dealing with?" "Murder, Watson. A serious case has already been made against the son of the murdered man. It happened in Boscombe Valley, near Hereford. The owner of much land in that area is a Mr. John Turner. He came back from Australia a few years ago and settled here. Made his fortune, did he? Enough to buy several farms. One he let out to another Australian, Mr. Charles McCarthy. McCarthy has a son of 18 called James." "Are there no wives?" I asked. "Neither of the wives is still living, but Turner has one daughter of similar age to James." "And the murder?" "It seems that last Monday, McCarthy left his house at Hatherley at about 3 in the afternoon. He walked down to Boscombe Pool, a small lake at the end of Boscombe Valley. He told his servant that he had an appointment at 3 o'clock. He never came back alive. McCarthy was seen walking towards the pool by 2 people. Both say he was walking alone. The gamekeeper also says that a few minutes later, James McCarthy went the same way, carrying a gun. He thought the son was following his father." "And was the father shot?" I asked. Oh, no, replied Holmes. Please wait. There was another witness. Patience Moran, daughter of the lodgekeeper on the Boscombe estate, was picking flowers in the woods. She says that she saw James and his father having a violent quarrel. She heard Charles McCarthy using strong language to his son, and she saw the son raise his hand as if to strike his father. Holmes continued. She ran away and told her mother. Almost as soon as she had finished telling her story, James McCarthy ran up and said he had found his father dead. They followed him and found the body by the side of the pool. The head had been beaten in by blows from some heavy and blunt weapon. Such as the butt end of a gun? I asked. Exactly. Anyway, Watson, James McCarthy has been arrested and charged with his father's murder. It looks exceedingly grave against the young man. Has he said anything? Indeed he has, and it makes an interesting case. According to James McCarthy, he had been away in Bristol for 3 days. He came back to find his father out. He set out to do some rabbit shooting at the other side of Boscombe Pool. About 100 yards from the pool, he heard a cry of "Cooey!" which was the usual signal between him and his father. His father was surprised to see him. For some reason, an argument took place, and James walked off. He had not gone far when he heard a dreadful cry. According to his story, he returned and found his father dying. He held him in his arms, but he could do nothing. He then ran off to the lodgekeepers for help. Is there nothing else to go on? I asked. 2 things which may turn out to be important, said Holmes. James heard his father speak before he died. He said he spoke about a rat. A rat? Precisely, my dear Watson. And the other matter was the subject of the quarrel. Which was? James McCarthy refused to tell the coroner what they quarrelled about. Refused? Quite so. Holmes looked up at me, raised his eyebrows and smiled. You see why I am interested, Watson. This is not such a simple case as they would have us believe.
Case: the Boscombe Valley Mystery. Please explain this case before Holmes started to search. Mr. McCarthy's head had been badly injured, likely from blows with a hard and heavy object. James McCarthy was arrested and charged with his father's murder. James McCarthy's explanation. James claimed that he met his father by chance near the pool. They had an argument due to a difference of opinion, after which James walked away. Shortly afterward, he heard his father cry out in the distance. He immediately ran back and found his father already dead. James insisted that he did not kill anyone. However, he would not disclose the reason for the argument.
Chapter 2. A Blow from Behind. We arrived at the Hereford Arms in Ross at 4:30. We were sipping our tea when the door burst open and in rushed one of the loveliest young women I have ever seen. "Oh, Mr. Sherlock Holmes," she cried. "I am so glad you have come. I know that James didn't do it. We have known each other since we were children. He is too tender-hearted to hurt a fly." "You may rely on my doing all that I can," replied Holmes, deducing correctly that the lady was Mr. Turner's daughter, Alice. "James never did it," she repeated. "And about his quarrel with his father, I am sure he refused to speak of it because it concerned me.
In what way?
Mr. McCarthy wanted James to marry me. We have always loved one another like brother and sister. But James is so young, and he is not willing to commit himself to such a step. She blushed, and I deduced that she would not object to marrying him, however.
Thank you, said Holmes. And may I see your father tomorrow?
I am afraid the doctor won't allow it.
The doctor?
Have you not heard? Poor father has not been strong for years, but this has made him quite ill. He was such a strong man once, when he was in Australia. Mr. McCarthy was the only man who knew him in those days.
Really? Said Holmes. That is interesting. Thank you, Miss Turner. You have been a great help.
She smiled gratefully at him. I must go home now. Father misses me so, if I leave him. She hurried from the room as impulsively as she had entered. Holmes decided to set off for Hereford immediately to see James McCarthy. And while he was away, I pondered the details of the murder. The local paper had the full inquest report, which included the surgeon's description of the injuries. The bones on the left-hand side of the skull, at the back, had been shattered by a heavy blow. This gave me pause for thought. Such a blow must have been struck from behind, which is not what you would expect in a face-to-face argument. Then there was the matter of the man's dying words. A rat. What could it mean? Holmes returned late, without much more information. He had found out, though, the truth about James's feelings towards Miss Turner.
He is madly in love with her, remarked Holmes.
Then why argue with his father about the match?
Because, Watson, he is already married.
Great heavens, Holmes! He is hardly more than a boy.
And he was even more of a boy when he got himself into the clutches of a barmaid in Bristol. He married her secretly over a year ago, when Miss Turner was away at boarding school.
So he is being scolded for not doing what he would love to do. How maddening.
Quite so.
However, good may come of this evil. It seems that the barmaid found out he was in serious trouble. She has thrown him over. She has written to say that she has a husband already in the Bermuda dockyard. So there is no tie between them?
Happily so. But a small comfort for being in prison on a murder charge.
But if he is innocent, who has done it?
Let me draw your attention to two things, Watson. First, the murdered man had an appointment with someone. That person could not have been his son. His son was away, and he didn't know when he was returning.
Of course. And the second thing?
The murdered man was heard to cry, "Cooey," before he knew his son was anywhere near. The case depends upon such things.
Holmes closed his eyes and would say no more. Chapter 3. The Scene of the Crime. The following morning we set off for Hatherley Farm and the Boscombe Pool. As the carriage bounced down the country lanes, Holmes turned to me.
One other interesting fact, Watson. Mr. McCarthy lived at Hatherley Farm rent-free.
How very generous of Mr. Turner, I replied. But then, they were friends from Australia.
Does it not seem odd, though? McCarthy, who had so little of his own, talked of marrying his son to Turner's daughter. He talked of it in a very confident way, but I have discovered that Turner himself was against it. It did seem odd, but I could deduce nothing from it. We soon arrived at the farm, a comfortable-looking two-storey building. The maid, at Holmes' request, showed us the boots McCarthy had been wearing. She also found a pair of his son's boots. Holmes measured them all very carefully, and then set off to the pool. It was damp, marshy ground, and there were marks of many feet on the path and on the short grass beside it. "How simple it would have been," exclaimed Holmes, "if I had been here before they came like a herd of buffalo. Many of the important tracks have been obscured." He peered at the ground, then cried, "Aha! Here are 3 separate tracks of the same feet." He took out a lens and lay down to get a better view, all of the time talking to himself. "These are young McCarthy's feet. Twice he was walking, and once he ran swiftly. The soles are deeply marked, but the heels hardly visible. That bears out his story. Here are the father's feet as he paced up and down. Ha! What have we here? Tiptoes. Tiptoes, square too. Quite unusual boots. Now, where did they come from?" Holmes paced up and down, sometimes losing and sometimes finding the track. He stopped in the edge of the wood, and under the shadow of a great beech tree he lay down again. He stayed there a long time, turning over leaves and dry twigs. A jagged stone was lying among the moss. He picked it up and examined it carefully. Then he got up and followed a pathway through the woods which led to the main road, where he stopped. He showed me the stone. "This may interest you," he said. "If I am not mistaken, the murder was done with it." He did not sound as if he expected to be mistaken, but I had to ask, "How can you tell? There are no marks on it." The grass was growing under it, so it had only been there a few days. It matches the injuries, and there is no sign of another weapon. "And the murderer?" "The murderer is a tall man, left-handed. He limps with the right leg and wears thick-soled shooting boots. He smokes Indian cigars, uses a cigar holder, and carries a blunt penknife. There are several other indications, but these may be enough to aid us in our search." Holmes was silent for a long time, and we did not speak again until we were back at the Hereford Arms.
Please explain what Holmes and Watson had discovered in this case so far. The content of the quarrel between the son and the father. Mr. McCarthy wanted his son James to marry Mr. Turner's daughter. However, this was not possible for James, as he had already secretly married another woman. When Mr. McCarthy found out about the hidden marriage, he must have been furious. He scolded his son for keeping it a secret, and the argument escalated. It's possible that Mr. McCarthy became physically aggressive, prompting James to raise his hand in self-defense. The bones on the left-hand side of the skull, at the back, had been shattered by a heavy blow. The attacker must have approached from a hidden position behind the victim. This fact worked in James' favor, as it suggested he was probably not the killer. The possibility is high that the killer is left-handed. Holmes' prediction. The murderer is a tall, left-handed individual who limps on his right leg. He wears thick-soled shooting boots, smokes Indian cigars using a cigar holder, and carries a blunt pocket knife. The murder weapon was a stone. Since grass was growing underneath it, the stone had only been in place for a few days.
Chapter 4. A Rat. After lunch, Holmes sat with his tapering fingers together, staring into space. Then he turned to me. I don't know quite what to do, Watson. I should value your advice. Let me explain. Pray do so. Let us presume that what young James said was true. In what respect? About two things in particular. One I mentioned earlier, that his father called cooee before seeing him. The other was McCarthy's dying words about a rat. What of this cooee, then? It could not have been meant for his son. As far as McCarthy knew, his son was in Bristol. The cooee was meant to call the person he was meeting. But cooee is an Australian greeting. Hence, he was expecting to meet someone from Australia. I nodded. And the rat? Holmes took out a folded paper from his pocket. This is a map of the colony of Victoria in Australia. I had it sent over this morning. He put his hand over part of the map. What do you read? Arat, I said. And now? He raised his hand. I could see the whole word. Ballarat. Quite so. That was the word that McCarthy spoke. His son heard the last part only. He was trying to say the name of his murderer. So-and-so of Ballarat. That's wonderful. It's obvious. Now, you see, I have narrowed down the field. A tall Australian who is at home in the district. At home enough to find his way through the back of the estate. His height you deduced from the length of his stride, and his boots. But what about his lameness? The mark of his right foot was always less clear than his left. He put less weight on it. Why? Because he limped. But his left-handedness? You noticed the injury as reported at the inquest. A blow struck from behind, yet from the left side. Surely a left-handed man? He stood behind the tree during the argument between James and his father. He even smoked there. I found the ash of a cigar. As you know, I am an expert on tobacco ash. I then discovered the cigar stump in the moss where he had thrown it. And the cigar holder? The cigar had not been in his mouth, therefore he had used a holder. The tip had been cut off, not bitten. It was not a clean cut, so I deduced a blunt penknife. I see where this all points. The murderer must be Mr. John Turner, cried a voice. It was the hotel waiter opening the door. He showed a visitor into the room. The man who entered was a strange and impressive figure. He had a slow, limping step, but his craggy face and huge arms and legs gave an impression of strength of body and character. His face was white and his lips tinged with blue. As a doctor, I could see that he was a very ill man. Pray take a seat, said Holmes. You got my note? The lodgekeeper brought it. You said you wished to see me here to avoid scandal. I thought people would talk if I came to the hall. And why did you wish to see me? The man asked, wearily. I know all about McCarthy, said Holmes. The old man sunk his face in his hands. God help me, he cried. But I would have spoken out. I would not have let that young man come to harm. I am glad to hear it, said Holmes gravely. I would have spoken of it already, but my dear daughter, it will break her heart when she sees me arrested. It may not come to that, said Holmes. What? I am no police officer. Your daughter invited me here, and I am acting in her interests. Young McCarthy must be got off, however. I am a dying man, said Turner. The doctor says I have but a month, yet I would sooner die under my own roof than in jail. Just tell us the truth while I jot down the facts. You will sign it with Watson as witness. If the case goes against young McCarthy, I shall use your confession. You may be assured I shall not use it unless it is absolutely needed. It's as well, said the old man. I doubt I shall live until the trial, but I would still like to spare Alice the shock. I will tell you all. It will not take long.
Thanks for watching this video. It's the first part of the book, Stories of Sherlock Holmes. Please continue reading through the link below. Discussion. Who do you think the killer is? Why do you think he killed Father McCarthy? Well done. Thank you very much. Narrated by teacher Phoebe from English Aloud. Questions and answers by Kevin and Phoebe from English Aloud.